Hi, this is Diversity of Life, Investigation 3, Vocabulary, Part 2. First word in Part 2 is pronounced prokaryotic. Prokaryotic means a cell that has no nucleus. And of all the kingdoms that we study in 7th grade science, only the monoran kingdom is the kingdom that has cells that are prokaryotic. So in other words, bacteria. All bacteria are prokaryotic. You can see in the picture here that there's no organized nucleus. They call it nucleoids. Eukaryotic means cells that have a nucleus, and that's every other living thing. They're all eukaryotic except for the monorans. And you have cells that are eukaryotic. So that's maybe one way you can help you remember. You are eukaryotic. So when you compare the two, there is no organized nucleus here, but in this one, there is a nucleus right here. And that's where all of your genetic information is going to be found. Sexual reproduction, it means that you need a sperm and an egg to create a new organism. And this can be in many different kingdoms. For instance, in the plant kingdom, they have to reproduce sexually also. So you can see that in a flower, there is this middle structure here, and that's where the sperm travels down, and then the swollen part of the flower is the ovule, which is the ovary, which is where the eggs are. So sexual reproduction, you need a sperm and an egg. Asexual reproduction does not involve the union of a sperm and an egg to create a new individual. Usually asexual reproduction happens in unicellular organisms. So they reproduce by simply dividing, the cell dividing, or they make some sort of a spore or something called fusion or budding, which is kind of like the cell dividing, only done a little bit differently. So here's a picture of a cell. This is one cell that is starting to divide into two new cells, so it has two nuclei, and then eventually they separate, and then they call them daughter cells. And that's how they reproduce. An autotroph is an organism that can make its own food using the sun's energy, and it has to have chloroplasts in its cells. So in other words, it has to be green. Auto is like autopilot. An autopilot, you can fly a plane can fly by itself, it's on autopilot. Autotroph, the organism can make its own food simply by using the sun's energy and having chloroplasts in its cell. So the food in plants is usually made in the form of carbohydrates. A heterotroph is an organism that has to find its own food. So in other words, organisms that aren't green, don't have chloroplasts, they're going to have to go out and find their own food. So this little guy's got his cheeks full of corn. Another organism that you think maybe isn't a heterotroph but is a mushroom. You tend to think of it as a plant, but is it green in color? It's not. So mushrooms have to go out and find their own food. Usually they'll feed off of other dead organisms.